connected to iPhone.
God, I hate the killers. But what about serial killers? Are they truly evil? Does the idea of evil even exist? Is it our fault when we humans do evil things? Or do we lack the ability to think for ourselves? Who knows? For these are just some of the intriguing queries mankind has yet to solve. So let's not find out the answers together with our video on the 5 most puzzling questions of humanity. In at number 5, what is our purpose? If humanity has a goal, if we have one sole purpose as a race, then what is it? Are we supposed to spread our numbers throughout the galaxy using our deliciously potent seed? Or are thoughts and ideas more important? Should we focus on getting our hot take on the universe to as many civilizations as possible in the hope of validating retweets? Or perhaps there's a third option. Maybe we're supposed to remain insular and simply progress on our own within the confines of Earth, eventually reaching a point where we're able to master our home planet completely. But there's a problem there, because if humanity can eventually control everything around us and bend the Earth to our whims, what do we do after that? Just spend eternity getting our rocks off? You know full well you play a game on cheat mode, it gets boring real fast. So when humans can do whatever they want without challenge or consequence, where's the fun in that? Where's the interesting conflict which drives us forward? So perhaps humanity doesn't have one single goal. Perhaps we should focus on our individual purposes instead. Well, what are they? Should we live only to work, to learn, or to live to love life and laugh? Like that schmaltzy quote your lonely aunt's always sharing on Facebook. As broad a question as this may seem, the fact is we may have to make this decision pretty soon. Automation is taking over more and more industries, so working a 9-to-5 might become a smaller part of everyone's lives in the not-so-distant future. We'll need new meanings for existence other than a career. And sure, we've all got goals already. We want to start a family, write that novel, lose some weight off our fat asses. But these aren't life purposes. They're short-term tasks generated by basic needs. We start families because of our biological drive to procreate. We want to write a novel because of the nice feeling it gives us when our brain is stimulated with pleasing chemicals. And losing weight, that's just survival instinct so we can outrun cougars and raptors. And probably some inherent human need to fit into a nice pair of jean shorts too, I guess. So without these, what is the point? What is the meaning of your existence? And should we all start thinking about this a little more than we do? At 4, can we think for ourselves? We've covered aspects of free will before on this channel and speculated that it might not exist. This is because many factors seem to affect what humans do. And when you take them all into account, it leaves very little room for independent thought to exist. Let's say you disagree with the above statement, and you believe free will exists. How would you prove it? Would you suddenly eat a whole block of cheese and color your nipples purple? However random that may seem, you're doing it for easily traceable reasons. You own cheese because your instincts say you need food to eat. You own a purple marker because one day you were manipulated psychologically into thinking you needed one. And the whole thing is combined into a giant weird tableau for the sole purpose of proving our statement wrong. You've been influenced on every step of the way. Each day, humans do things automatically because of our genes, our instincts, and the subconscious decisions our brains have been proven to make before we're even aware of it. And on top of that, there's the influence of society and other people. Do we do what we do because other people are using psychological tricks on us to influence our minds? And if so, what has influenced those people to do that? How many of these people are working together? Is the whole world under some kind of spell sending us in one particular direction? Or is this all paranoia, and free will is something you have to determine for yourself? As we said before, the more we discover about the workings of the human brain, the less scope there is for personal choice and responsibility. And this brings us neatly onto our next question. At 3, do good and evil exist?
Do they?
Many would say that good and evil acts exist without question. Whether it's stroking a lost puppy and feeding it some chow, or taking said puppy and forcing it through a mincing machine. These are easily identifiable to a balanced mind as fundamentally good or evil. But good and evil are loaded terms, and even the words right and wrong can be subjective. There is no universal set of principles which applies to everyone, and nor can you live life by the mantra, do unto others as you'd have others do to you. Because I like some seriously weird stuff done to me, and not everyone's into that. We also have an imbalanced relationship with the idea of good and evil acts, and how they inform our perception of a person. A single evil act can make an otherwise good person seem bad, whereas a single good act rarely has the same effect on someone seen as evil. The idea of people or activities being purely right or wrong seems almost religious. It's too absolute. If we're objective about it, nobody, not even history's best or worst people, are truly 100% good or evil. Hitler liked animals. John Wayne Gacy helped out the community. Mother Teresa thought the sick should suffer like Jesus on the cross. And Gandhi let his wife suffer an agonizing death after refusing to allow the colonial British to help her, only to accept their help years later when he was suffering. That, and he always nukes the crap out of me on civilization. I hate that guy.
And Gandhi didn't.
There's a little bit of good and bad in everyone, even those we build into caricatures. And as we come to understand the chemical processes and psychological influences behind human decision-making, you have to wonder if we're really responsible for our own actions at all. Might we one day reach a point where we accept that humans are controlled by uncontrollable things? Is it only when we remove the idea of responsibility and look at our influences that we begin to figure out how to prevent evil acts? And what compels us to be good? At number 2, are we equal or superior? Humans are undoubtedly more intelligent than anything else on the planet, but does this make us special? Are we superior because of our advanced abilities? Or is all life of equal importance? Well, to find out, let's look at what makes us think we're so darn fancy in the first place. Human beings are able to use tools, set fires, speak languages, and engage in cultural activities. And that's pretty neat. But many animals have been observed doing some of these things too, so this doesn't make us permanently and unquestionably superior. We're all running the same race, it's just that humans are in the lead. But who knows what might happen in the future? If a drug-resistant superbug came along and obliterated all human life, suddenly, we don't look so superior after all. Okay then, what about consciousness? Surely the fact that we humans are aware of our existence and are able to ask such questions makes us superior. I've never seen a dog have an existential crisis, or a gorilla wondering about its place in the universe. Well, this doesn't really work either. René Descartes described animals and plants as stimulus-response machines, reacting only to the world around them based on what they can sense. And he saw humans as separate thinking beings with a sense of self, a conscious identity. But one leading theory claims that human consciousness is merely an evolutionary development based on sense and perception. So once more, we're running the same race. We aren't fundamentally different beings to animals and plants.
If you ever listen to the Stoned
ape theory. Stoned, like high, stoned ape theory. That's another good theory for consciousness. Or
So once more, we're Renich's identity. Stimulus response machines, reacting only to the world around them based on what they can sense. And he saw humans as separate thinking beings with a sense of self, a conscious identity. But one leading theory claims that human consciousness is merely an evolutionary development based on sense and perception. So once more, we're running the same race. We aren't fundamentally different beings to animals and plants. We're just more developed. So if every animal has a certain level of consciousness, which we think they do, and a certain level of intellectual ability, which we know they do, then where's the cutoff point? Is it just between man and everything else? Is it between the animals we think are tasty and the ones we think are cute? Are we that superior we deserve to do as we please? Or should we accept our place as temporary custodians of a dynamic world and show equal respect to the bugs on our shoe as we do our neighbors and friends? Man, that sounds like some hippy-dippy shit right there. And in it, the bugs on our shoe.
That's why I listen to this dude, yo.
Where's the cutoff point?
Cause he gives you some good ass shit, but then his jokes and that shit. Where's the cutoff point between animals we think are tasty and animals we think are cute? And that's something else too. Like when motherfuckers like, oh, in Japan they eat dogs, they eat frogs. What the fuck, you eat chickens and cows? What the fuck is the difference? What is the difference in a cow and a dog? Cows are just as smart as fucking dogs are. I think. Dogs are pretty fucking smart. But cows are smart as shit. Horses are smart as shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, dolphins are fucking... There's all kind of smart ass animals. What's the fucking difference? What's the difference? You eat fucking pigs. Oh, Chinese people be eating cats. You eat a fucking pig, bitch. So, what's the fucking difference? Oh, because one is cute and one is tasty. How you know a cat ain't tasty until you ate it? How you know a dog ain't tasty until you ate it? Or snake, or frog, or eel, or whatever the fuck. You know, what is the difference in a fucking a fox and a goddamn a turkey? You know what I'm saying? What is the fucking difference? Oh, because the Bible told you what animals to eat and what not to eat, right? You don't eat shellfish. You don't eat animals without a split hoof. You don't eat some other shit, man. The Bible gave motherfuckers all kind of rules on what to eat, what not to eat. Motherfuckers don't care about that shit though, man. Animals are goddamn animals. But yeah, he talking about... Damn, I forgot that second joke he said just now already. This dude right here, funny as shit. This is called... This this YouTube channel is Strange Mysteries.
Is it just between man and everything else? Is it between the animals we think are tasty and the ones we think are cute? Are we that superior we deserve to do as we please? Or should we accept our place as temporary custodians of a dynamic world and show equal respect to the bugs on our shoe as we do our neighbors and friends? Man, that sounds like some hippy-dippy shit right there.
That sounds like some hippy-dippy shit right there.
And in at number 1, what comes next?
Oh, hell. What comes next?
Where does humanity go after Homo sapiens? Homo apparatus? A hybrid of man and machine.
Ooh.
Homo vestibulum. Part man, part gas. Or does evolution only count when it's flesh, meat, and bones? If that's true, I'm probably Homo cheeseburger. And that's a term you should never ever Google. Anyway,
Homo cheeseburger.
With regards to the future of man,
ever Google.
we humans have changed the course of our own natural evolution. It is possible we may never reach any higher form of biological being because we simply don't need to. We lost our body hair because it helped us avoid overheating. But our intelligence negated this by creating clothes for the winter. We started to walk upright to help us see threats from further away and use our arms for hunting. But now we got binoculars and RPGs to do that instead. So what do we really need to exist in our modern world? We all want wings, gills, and a third boob, but we don't need those things. There are few challenges we cannot overcome with technology. So it stands to reason that man will continue to use high-tech adornments instead of relying on physical biological development. But could we instead develop mentally? Is an evolution of our consciousness the next step? Perhaps we'll become some kind of transcendent species with capabilities beyond what we can comprehend today. Who knows? But it seems that by using technology, man has broken the rules of evolution and will continue to do so through genetic engineering. So where we go from here, that's up to us. And that's our list. Want to see more chin-scratchy videos that'll make you wonder what this all means? Then take a look at our recent piece on 4 possibilities for the meaning of life.
What? All that genetic engineering shit, man, that shit's gonna get crazy too.
I have found something you are going to love.
Really?
And I found this thanks to Megan Henderson. You ready?
Ready.
This is called Ernie. It's a
Human civilization hides things from itself. However, sometimes it leaves clues behind that point towards what is being hidden. Finding or understanding what is being hidden could be profound or not. Perhaps that's not what really matters though, but instead what the initial motivations were for hiding said thing in the first place. And furthermore, in the case of this list especially, why were clues left behind? The entire context surrounding these reasons actually seems like it would always be the most profound knowledge to acquire, even in comparison to what is being hidden itself. What information are the Greeks hiding on an ancient disk that to this day remains undecipherable? Why do entire languages exist that seem to belong to no one? Why are they there? And where do they come from? And finally, where's Nicolas Cage when you need him the most? Let's crack open this list of the top 10 messages and codes that have never been solved. Number 10. The Shugborough inscription. I'm sure many of you spend your days wandering through the grounds of Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire, England. Well, maybe not, but Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens certainly did. And within these grounds, carved onto a monument was an uncrackable code, the solution to which even eluded the great minds of those two Charlies. On the monument, there is a strange sequence of letters carved by an unknown person in the 18th century. The letters are DOUSVAVVN. And they're written in a way that looks like it's someone yelling angrily in a text message while they emphasize each word individually. But back to the point. No one has been able to figure out what these letters mean for over 250 years. They're just there. But there are clues which could be useful, as clues usually are pretty useful. I think I'm about to mispronounce some things. The monument itself is a carving of Poisson's painting, The Shepherds of Arcadia, which depicts 3 shepherds pointing to a tomb. In the original painting, a Latin inscription on the tomb reads, begin quote, "I am even in Arcadia," end quote. Once again, all caps trying to yell. And one of the shepherds is pointing at the letter R. But on the monument version, the image is reversed. And the shepherd is now pointing at the N, as in Nathan, as somebody has deliberately broken his finger and fixed it into this new place. That's kind of weird. Now, you may think this could be the work of an old-timey vandal, and you could be right. Perhaps this was just an 18th century graffiti artist, and these mysterious letters spell out BZG was here representing 1778. But one amazing theory actually connects this carving to the myth of the Holy Grail, and BZG never did that. It was believed that the painter Poisson was a member of the Priory of Sion, which I talked about in my top 10 secret societies video. A secret society which, until being dissolved in...
That they talked about the Priory of Sion in the Da Vinci Code. That was a good book, yo. So I was in Philly, and my homeboy, like, I've only met like a few other readers than myself, you know, like dudes who like to read. Like, one of my homies, yo, this motherfucker really liked to read, yo. He had all these good books, yo, and he get it from his mom, yo. I get that shit from my aunt. My aunt got me into reading, and but his mom was a big reader. First time I went to her crib with him, and it was Valentine's Day. It was some holiday for some reason. I think it was Valentine's Day. He was like, yo, I'm about to go slide through my mom's crib. You wanna, you know, we was already doing whatever. I was like, yeah. So he went over there. His mom and her homegirls are all over there. And I just noticed her library, yo. She had like this fat ass bookshelf. I was looking at that shit like, whoa. And then she had like, she was a big X-Files fan too. She had like, on the bottom of the bookshelf was like all the X-Files DVDs. I was like, yo, his mom is cool as fuck, yo. And they're talking about some shit, and something about, they were talking about politics and, you know, world events at that time. And this was, I don't know, like 99 or 2000 or something like that. And I said, I made this one comment. I said, the way we can fix this world is if we make all the world leaders female. You know, just give the position of every major world leader of every major country, just give them a female leader. I say that shit would solve the fucking world, yo. And then his mom was like, his mom looked at me funny. She's like, you know what? I got something for you to read. And she went to the bookshelf and she pulled off Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. She said, you ever read this book? I said, no. Yeah, read this. Just give it back to me when you're done. I don't know what about that comment made her think that I should read that book. And I kind of correlated because the power of the woman, the Holy Grail is actually the vessel, the female. And so, yeah. And the whole story is about the woman. But that shit was good as hell, though. And so, yeah, so he just mentioned the Priory of Sion. So that was the first time I've ever heard about the Priory. It was in Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. And I know it's an old book now, and they've made movie, like one or two movies. Well, they did Angels and Demons and The Da Vinci Code. But if you have never read that book, I'm telling you, yo, like, it's a good read. It's a page turner. You'll be up like, oh, I'm gonna just read like the first 2 chapters. Nah, you ain't gonna read the first 2 chapters. You're gonna read like the first 6 or 7 chapters. Like, holy shit, because man, that shit starts out so fucking crazy, and then it's a fucking roller coaster. Like, the whole time is like so fucking fat. There's always something happening in that story, like, because they running out of time and they gotta solve the fucking puzzle, yo. Langdon, is that was the character's name? Damn, it's been a minute since I read that book, though. Anyway, reminiscing on old literature.
Painter Poisson was a member of the Priory of Sion, which I talked about in my top 10 secret societies video. A secret society which, until being dissolved in 1956, had been going since the 11th century. And they were a little bit weird. In a book called The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, it was speculated that Poisson's painting contained a message about the Grail's location at that time. And the amendments to Shugborough Monument, they point to its possible resting place today. And now, a lot of people just kind of know that the Holy Grail is a special thing, but what exactly is it? Well, apparently it's some combination of Celtic lore and Christian things having to do with the Bible and the Last Supper of Jesus, whereby he either drank out of it at the Last Supper or appeared as an apparition and did some things. It just depends upon what you're reading at the time. Basically, it just appears and does magical things. And if you drink out of it, it gives you special powers, all sorts of cool stuff. So it's a pretty badass thing to have. Now, another thing...
And that's what... Isn't that what the first Indiana Jones movie? He was looking for Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. You be up early, dude. Old man can't get no sleep. But didn't Indiana Jones search for the Holy Grail in that one movie? Or that chalice or whatever? Damn, it's been so long since I watched the Indiana Joneses.
Having to do with the Holy Grail. If you've ever heard the show or the place Oak Island, well, some people think that the Holy Grail is buried there. And that'd be cool to find the Holy Grail. You know, we find an object that we can now use to kind of verify all these stories and lore that we've heard, maybe. But the Holy Grail is also supposed to be buried with the Ten Commandments, allegedly. And finding the Ten Commandments would be pretty crazy, just to kind of see all that stuff written in stone, according to the Old Testament, in person. And it would just link our present beliefs, or some people's present beliefs, with the past in a tangible way. It'd be pretty ground-shaking. So that's why the Holy Grail is so important. Let's move on. Number 9, Beale's buried treasure. And although you don't know it yet, you might actually know who this Beale is. Anyways, an old Virginia story once told of a man in the early 19th century known only as Beale, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing. This man reportedly owned enough treasure to fill 2 whole wagons. And now, unlike you and I, and probably most people, who would have just taken this treasure to the nearest burlesque-themed casino stripper bar, if such a place exists, I'm sure one does, Beale apparently just buried his 2 wagons of treasure in the ground, and it remains there to this day. It's almost like, why even have the treasure? You're just gonna put it in the ground. Like, you could have done cool stuff with it. Like, well, I guess they didn't have, like, really cool electronics or video games or 4K screens back in the 19th century, so maybe you really couldn't buy that much cool stuff besides, like, a mansion or a big boat, but it wouldn't be a speedboat. So this is probably one of those old wives' tales where there's a lame moral about possessions or something, right? Well, not necessarily. After burying the treasure, Beale left a small locked box with the local innkeeper, and then left town forever. Well, the innkeeper, I guess, got pretty curious, as I think anyone would, and he opened the box years later and found 3 indecipherable letters. I mean, I guess all my letters would probably be indecipherable too if my best friend was an innkeeper and I'd been drinking all day. But no, these were written in a code. The innkeeper's friend managed to crack first and discovered that not only was the treasure buried somewhere in Bedford County, but that the haul consisted of thousands and thousands of pounds of gold, silver, and jewels, which would be worth around $63 million today. Now, the other 2 letters, which are as of yet still unsolved, probably contain further information about where this treasure is buried, although personally I think it'd be funnier if the final letter turned out to be an essay on why most people in history were never dumb enough to bury their treasure. Because seriously, even pirates weren't that stupid. And when I tell you who this guy actually is, it's just not going to make sense. Anyways, if you want to attempt to find this century-old hoard, then you can join the other treasure hunters who dig up parts of Bedford County illegally, even to this day. Maybe you'll even get TV show where they film you doing this. But then unfortunately on your TV show, because you're not really making any progress on finding the treasure at all, you have to exaggerate things you found or other people already have, or just make things up. Or you could try the smarter approach and try to solve the letters. First letter was solved when the innkeeper's friend discovered that the cipher key was in, and this is when we need Nicolas Cage, the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Oh, and what was Beale's full name? Thomas Jefferson Beale. Number 8, the Physos disc. The Physos disc is a large circular object made of clay which contains important information, hopefully, about ancient Greece. Basically, if ancient Greece had a bunch of movies, this is what they would have stored it on. It's that equivalent. The disc was discovered on the Greek island of Crete in 1906, and it has 242 mysterious symbols stamped into it in a spiral, but we have no idea what they mean. However, we may have another ancient artifact which can tell us. In 1990, several large clay tablets dating back to 1800 BC were excavated on the same island, and they contained another undecipherable set of symbols. Well, for a while. The two styles of writing were named Linear A and Linear B, and Linear B was cracked in the 1950s. Linear A shares many symbols with Linear B, but trying to solve it using the same processes results in just gibberish. What's with the Greeks making their ancient writings harder to crack than a copy of SimCity? Not that I've ever tried to do that, but anyways, there are some similarities between the Physos disc and Linear A, which is why some archaeologists believe if we solve one, we can solve both. So what information lies within these ancient Greek tablets? Have we stumbled upon an ancient way of speaking not seen for nearly 4 millennia? Probably. So what fantastical knowledge might we uncover? Well, the ancient Greeks were responsible for some of the fundamental components of modern philosophy, mathematics, and physics, so there could be some world-changing ideas in these tablets. Or maybe it could be just as boring as the information we found after deciphering the information on Linear B, which contained records of wool, sheep, and grain storage. Very strange, but it's not going to change your life. Number 7. The Dead Dropout. He was a high school dropout from St. Louis. He had a criminal record for statutory rape, and he was still living with his mom. Basically, you'd be just as likely to find him working at McDonald's as you would be talking to Dr. Phil. So why is this man on a list of uncracked codes when his life seems like one incredibly sad and depressing story? Well, the reason actually has more to do with his death. Ricky McCormick's corpse was found 15 kilometers from his home in a field in West Alton, Missouri. Nobody knows how he got there, as he didn't own a car, and nor was transport to the area available. No official cause of death was ever determined, as his body was too badly decomposed, and he was only identified by his fingerprints. But inside Ricky's pockets were 2 pieces of paper. Each was a note containing an unknown code. What else did you think it would contain? Which mostly consisted of jumbled letters and numbers. McCormick couldn't have written these complex notes because he was dyslexic. His mother said he struggled to even write his own name. So, who did write them? And what do they say? The FBI ended up posting the codes online in a request for help solving this cold case. But still, as of yet, nobody has come forward with anything useful. The current operating theory pegs McCormick as some kind of courier, and the layout of the note suggests a list. He had a history with drugs, so perhaps this was a list of coded suppliers. But if that's true, then why was he killed? An alternative theory states that Ricky did actually write these notes, and that dyslexia caused him to simply write a jumbled arrangement of the words in his head. Unfortunately, it's unlikely we'll ever know what these notes say and who was responsible for the end of Ricky McCormick's tragic life. Move on to something a bit happier. Number 6. The Secret Chinese Millions. In 1933, 7 gold bars were issued to a man named General Wang. Now, as you all know, I'm a bit too classy to make a joke about his name, so let's just simply move on. The gold bars were representative of metal certificates which linked to a significant bank deposit in an unknown U.S. bank. How significant? $300 million. That's pretty significant. Unless you're Bill Gates, who uses $300 million every morning to wipe away breakfast milk from his mouth. Nobody knows where this mysterious $300 million is, if it indeed exists at all, but clues are to be found in some strange inscriptions on the gold bars themselves. They contain a combination of pictures, Chinese writing, and cryptograms in Latin letters. If you want, you can actually go online and analyze these cryptograms for yourself, as the gold bars have been scanned by the International Association for Cryptologic Research. But nobody has yet been able to verify the true meaning of the codes. Still, do they genuinely reveal the location of the $300 million, which has just been untouched for nearly a century? Or is it all fake, like that Chinese version of Super Mario Wonderful I bought featuring Snow White and Captain Crunch?
What's good, everybody?
As it was fake, why wasn't fake? Number 5, the Rohan Codex. One of the most confusing books of all time is the Rohan Codex. This old Hungarian text is written in an insane mix of old Hungarian runes, letters, and symbols which, like the lyrics of every Little Wayne song ever, have so far resisted any attempt at translation. The Rohan Codex surfaced in the 18th century, and scholars have no idea who wrote it. The lyrics of every time is the Rohan Codex. This old Hungarian text is written in an insane mix of old Hungarian runes, letters, and symbols which, like the lyrics of every Little Wayne song ever, have so far resisted any attempt at translation.
You had to laugh at this.
The Rohan Codex surfaced in the 18th century, and scholars have no idea who wrote it, or why. The Codex features 448 pages, and also contains illustrations of religious and military scenes. These scenes occasionally use religious iconography found in Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam, leading some to speculate.
Leading some to speculate we need a commercial? Get the fuck out of here.
That it could be written in an early Hindi language rather than Hungarian. But the crazy fact about this text is that it contains more unique characters than any major language outside of Chinese, which obviously makes this a particularly complex code to crack. I mean, just what was this? Number 4, the Voynich manuscript. In 1912, American bookseller Wilfred Voynich discovered a book filled with plant diagrams and astronomical imagery, along with some other pretty weird stuff. It was written in a language he couldn't understand, and after consulting several language experts, it was actually revealed that this was written in a language or script that was, and still remains, completely unknown to modern linguists. But so what? The images in the book are pretty straightforward, aren't they? Plants, herbs. We can make an educated guess about the book's content, right? Wrong. Why? Because the plants and species contained in the Voynich manuscript do not match any known species on Earth. Carbon dating traces the book's origin to the early 15th century, and in addition to the biological drawings contained in its 240 pages of mysterious content, there are images of humans in long tubular structures, diagrams of planets not known at the time of writing, and many other weird and unidentifiable diagrams, to put it simply. The book is now believed to be a pharmacopoeia, which I would pronounce wrong if it wasn't for Google Translate, by some, which is a collection of techniques and recipes used by medieval alchemists and doctors. But if it was just that, why is it in such a complex code? Does it contain ancient cures and remedies lost to history? Maybe you'd like to take a look at the book yourself and try to crack it via the Yale University website, but it might take you a while. And if you do, let me know in the comments below, and if you really did it, you and I are both going to Vegas. On me. I'm not saying my awesome followers couldn't crack the code. I'm, sure you could. except for the ones who make fun of my hair. I don't think you're smart enough to do it. But anyways, for the rest of you, maybe you should just watch the rest of the video and take a little inspiration first. Especially because this is a code that even stumped the British code breakers who smashed the German World War II Enigma machine. And if Benedict Cumberbatch can't crack it, nobody can. Number 3, Elgar's Secret Symphony.
Well,
Edward
Benedict
Elgar
Cumberbatch
is
really
one of the
was
greatest
in Sherlock
composers ever to have lived. If you don't believe me, just listen to any version of Nimrod, the classical composition, not the Green Day album, and tell me the hairs on your neck don't stand up so fast that they just fly straight off your skin. It's on a list of history's most mysterious unsolved messages, even if it's only for the fact that his most popular work contained hidden secrets woven into the score. Now, rappers might lay down a cryptic insult in a diss track, but Edward Elgar was way ahead of those jerks. Plus, he was a nice man. His Enigma Variations work still fascinates musicians today, as each variation within the piece actually refers to one of his friend's personalities, but in a musical way. That's so cool. I want to make a Facebook app like that. Elgar was fascinated by codes, ciphers, and riddles. However, it isn't his Enigma Variations which we're interested in. It's a piece of work which may have not been heard by a single person on Earth, or Jupiter, or the planet of the apes, or anywhere for that matter. On July 14th, 1987, Elgar sent an encrypted letter to Dora Penny, which is now known as the Doorbell Cipher. Miss Penny was a friend of Elgar, and 17 years his junior. But anyways, basically, one of the greatest composers of all time was in the friend zone. So, was this a letter of love? Did he plead to her that he just totally wasn't like the other guys? Or was it something more amazing? Maybe he could predict the future, just like the guys in the last video could. The note contains 87 characters over 3 lines, made up of 24 symbols, each of which consists of 1, 2, or 3 semicircles pointed in one of 8 directions. A musicologist attempted to interpret the note as written in the English language, but others believe it was written in an entirely different sort of language, the language of music. The 8 positions of the semicircles could represent notes of the musical scale, which means this could be a code for a hidden melody written by Elgar. Presumably, and possibly, one so beautiful that he sent it to the one woman he's secret. Oh, the air conditioning! Sorry about that, guys. Sometimes the air conditioning in my house turns on and rumbles from the ceiling, and it affects my mic, and it gets picked up in the background, so I get angry when it turns on randomly. But back to the story. Okay, so Elgar presumably wrote a secret melody that could have been his most beautiful work ever, but we don't know. And he sent it to the one woman he loved, although she didn't love him back, and that's really sweet. I'm really glad the air conditioning's off now. Number 2, the Zodiac 340 letter. The Zodiac Killer was a serial murderer responsible for the deaths of 5 people in Northern California in the 1960s and 1970s. Unlike his name suggests, he didn't kill people who believe in astrology, because if he did, I'd shake his hand. The Zodiac Killer was implicated in the murders of 28 further victims, as well as those we don't even know of. And he claimed in letters to police to have killed as many as 37. So, what do we know for sure? Well, the Zodiac has never been caught. And the letters he sent out to the police and the press were more deeply encrypted than a Catholic priest's hard drive. Between 1966 and 1974, Zodiac sent more than 20 coded messages. The first was actually quite simple, and after being published in the press, was cracked by a history teacher and his wife. Ooh, that's gotta be kind of embarrassing when you're a serial killer. However, the following letters did become more complex. Most were cracked using a cipher included in one of his letters, but the Zodiac then used 3 other ciphers, none of which have been solved to this day. The letters that haven't been decoded are believed to hint at the killer's identity. Actually, his most famous message, a 340 character cipher sent on November 8th, 1969, is suspected to be the jackpot. And in 2012, a man called Corey Starlipper claimed to have solved the code, and his interpretation revealed the name Lee Allen, and one of the major Zodiac suspects was named Arthur Leigh Allen. Ugh! You guys almost had it. Starlipper's code break has been dismissed by experts and the authorities, and the case remains unsolved. So who was the Zodiac Killer? Is he still alive today? And what did you think about the movie that was made?
Morning, Mama. What is it?
I have to go away for a while.
About him. Do you think it was good? And if this person is still alive today, do they dread the day that someone actually cracks their code and uncovers the Zodiac's true identity? I mean, after the guy had his code solved by a history teacher and his wife, he made it more difficult, and then he put ciphers in, and then when they figured out the ciphers, he made the ciphers more complicated. And so, if his most famous message was indeed his most famous, it was probably one of his most complex or basically unsolvable ones. Because I don't think the guy is gonna actually leave a clue, unless he's, well, okay, maybe he would do that. Criminals can be weird sometimes. And number 1, Cicadia 3301. Okay, you may have heard of this one before. Pretty common. But have you heard the full story? The beginnings of Cicadia 3301? No? Alright. Well, tune in. There's only one place on the internet where something this strange would have...
I think I did hear. Yo, Carl, go inside. Yo, Raza. Yo, I think I did hear this one right here before. It was like, on some black website, and there was this fucking puzzle you had to solve, and that shit took you to a link that took you to another like deep website that had another fucking puzzle to solve. And it was like on some real Neo shit from the Matrix, like something about literally a white rabbit or some crazy ass shit, yo. And some a teenager motherfucking cracked that shit. Hold on, let me wait. What did he say the name of this shit was? Cause bro, it was some teenager, man, trying to figure this shit out, staying up all night. His parents is all fucking with him and shit, like, what are you doing? Up all night on that damn computer? Then he got his homeboy into it with him, and then he met some other strange hacker online who was trying to figure out this shit too. And I think it was like 2 or 3 of them that finally got through every level of this fucking cyber code, yo. And I'm about to say, I don't know if this is a movie or if this is part of that shit, but if something like somebody was just trying to find, or was it a company was trying to find some of the best hackers, and whoever can break this cipher, the company offered them a job, or that's not how that shit went. That's some other shit. I'm confusing too much shit right now. But I think I did hear this shit. Hold on. Let me go back. What was the name of this shit?
The beginnings of Cicadia 3301.
Cicadia.
This one before, well, okay, was indeed his most famous.
Common.
It was probably one of his most complex or
shit,
basically unsolvable ones. Because I don't think the guy is gonna actually leave a clue unless he's, well, okay, maybe he would do that. Criminals can be weird sometimes. And number 1, Cicadia 3301.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, you may have heard of this one before. Pretty common. But have you heard the full story? The beginnings of Cicadia 3301? No? Alright. Well, tune in. There's only one place on the internet where something this strange would originally appear. Got any guesses? Alright, time's up. It's 4chan. If you haven't been to 4chan before, after this video, go to Google and search for it. You need to see it once in your life. Anyways, things kicked off on January 5th, 2012, when an anonymous user posted this black and white image on the random board. As you can see from the image, it says, "Hello, we're looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. There's a message hidden in this image. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck, 3301. There's only 3 things capable of sending the internet into complete meltdown: sexy photos of Emma Watson, Half-Life 3 release dates, and puzzles. One person ignored the first 2, I'm not sure how, and actually cracked the first code. Joel Eriksson is a Swedish computer analyst, and after discovering information with the very pixels of this image, he found a second clue related to, you guessed it, Julius Caesar. Having figured out that this related to Caesar's own personal cipher system, he moved from clue to clue, solving puzzles related to art, literature, philosophy, and science. But then things started to go global. Apparently Cicada 3301 was a little bit bigger than just 4chan. Participants were directed towards physical clues taped to telephone poles in 14 cities around the world. I'm not sure how some of these people had time to go visit all these either. And those still playing the game now started to wonder what kind of organization is actually behind such a venture. Nobody really knows of any individuals who successfully solved all of the clues. As the final stage, Joel Eriksson reached was a tour website, which carried a message expressing disappointment that nobody had tried to solve the puzzle on their own instead of collaborating. A month after the first puzzle was posted, a new message appeared on the 4chan boards. I'm still not really sure why you would go to 4chan to look for intelligent individuals, but this one said, "Read it as I say it. We have now found the individuals we sought. Thus, our month-long journey ends." New puzzles followed in January 2013 and 2014, but were strangely absent in January of 2015. Will they ever reappear again in the future? Who knows? But clearly the group behind this mysterious message has a reason to attract such intelligent individuals, specifically from 4chan. Some believe that
Very good. You have done well.
2017 is here, and we are all waiting for the new Cicada 3301 puzzle to be posted. In the past, the puzzle has been posted in January of each year. There is a lot of speculation whether or not a new puzzle will be posted in 2017. The 2016 puzzle is currently in the process of being solved. Right now, as we know, Cicada has not announced a winner of the 2016 puzzle. This story brings you into what it's like solving the puzzle and what awaits once finished.
Good luck. 3301.
Marcus Wayner needed a little adventure in his life. A skinny 15-year-old brainiac with wire-frame glasses and wavy brown hair. He was the eldest of 5, homeschooled by their mother, a devout Catholic, near Roanoke, Virginia. Shuttling Marcus between home, church, and the Boy Scouts seemed like the best way to keep him away from trouble. "I missed out on a lot," he recalls with a sigh. "I didn't get out much." Though Marcus was gifted with computers, his mom and dad, an electrical engineer, also locked him down online. He couldn't send an email or register on a website without their permission. To make sure he was abiding, he was restricted to the living room computer, which they could see. It was the big brother eye over the shoulder thing, he said. But his parents only had so much power. There's no way we could check what he was up to if he covered his tracks, his mother admits. He's light years ahead of us. Marcus was a good kid, dependable, hardworking, the leader of his Boy Scout troop, just a project away from Eagle Scout, but he could only take so much. Until a point, I tried to go with the flow, he says, and then I was like, screw it. Screw It Day came January 7th, 2012. His parents had recently caved in and let him get a laptop. Dressed in a t-shirt and his green Boy Scout cargo shorts, he was sitting on his bed, surfing the science and math board on 4chan, the notorious underground forum, when he came across a strange image that had appeared on the site 3 days earlier. It contained a message written in thin white font against a black background. Hello, it read. We are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. There is a message hidden in this image. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck. It was signed 3301. For all
You guys
Marcus
ever heard
knew,
this shit, yo?
it could have been another dumb 4chan prank. He'd never been on for games like this, with the exception of the Rubik's Cube, which he could solve under a minute. Puzzles were dull, but it was late and he was bored. Someone on 4chan had created an internet relay chat channel where people were logging in to discuss the bizarre message. Marcus tried to imagine himself asking his parents for permission to chat with strangers on a site that had made a picture of a
That's
guy
fucking
stretching
deep,
open
bro.
his asshole, the net's grossest meme.
That's deep.
Then
I
again,
might
he
have to try
thought,
that shit.
maybe it was time he didn't ask for permission. With one click on the IRC link, Marcus said screw it and went inside, not knowing what or whom he'd find. Tech doesn't want to give his real name, or his full handle, or where he grew up, or the name of the university where he recently started as a freshman, or where he met for pizza one night this past fall. He's been feeling paranoid ever since he stumbled upon 3301, which is how he met Marcus. This is clear when someone accidentally drops a plate nearby us, and Tech, a pasty, scruffy 18-year-old with thick black hair and glasses, whips around in a panic. Sorry, he tells me. I'm still a bit twitchy. The twitchiness began January 5th, 2012. At the time, he was just another sheltered 15-year-old nerd, webmaster for his high school paper, and an earnestly goofy coder. One of his sites allowed visitors to send virtual fruit to one another. But his life took an unexpected turn that day when a friend in robotics lab showed him a mysterious image he'd seen on 4chan. Dude, you can't be on 4chan on the school computers. That's not wise, Tech recalls saying. That's like the chamber pot of the internet. But the challenge to find what was hidden in the picture intrigued him. He stared intently at the image. Someone on the IRC had heard rumors that the terrorist group's encrypted secret notes and image files, ones that could be retrieved by opening the file in a different format, run a text editing program called Notepad. He opened the image and sure enough saw a strange string of words and garbage characterized at the end. Tiberius Claudius Caesar. Tech looked at it with satisfaction. Caesar, he knew, was one of the most ancient forms of encryption, dating back to Julius Caesar, who used this cipher to safeguard military secrets. It works by taking down the alphabet and then counting down each letter based on a designated number. When Tech Googled Tiberius Claudius Caesar, he learned this was the 4th Roman Empire. Moving each character down 4 spots, the string of letters and numbers became a website address. When he clicked the link, it took him to a page with an image of a wooden duck and another encrypted message. Whoops, just decoys this way. Looks like you can't guess how to get the message out. When I asked Tech how he felt upon seeing the riddle, he laughed and said, it kinda rhymes with what the duck. He joined the conversation among the puzzle solvers on the IRC. To Tech, many seemed like the usual 4chan fakes. But one guy totally knew his shit. Marcus. Marcus and Tech had a lot in common. They were both 15, savvy online and self-reliant. He was a leader and, like myself, a bit of a control freak, Marcus says. And they were both already hooked on cracking the mystery. We just kind of figured, okay, we're in this together, Tech says. And other people just weren't doing as well as we were. Splitting off from the 4chan scrum, they formed their own private IRC channel. and cherry-picked other bright solvers to join them. They called their team Decipher. It consisted of about 10 like-minded 4chaners around the world. There was Waken, a 16-year-old Chilean-born math prodigy, who, as he puts it, obsesses about cryptography. There was John Henrik Gatorum, a 26-year-old hacker in the Arctic Circle of Norway, who did sound and lights for the local concerts during the long sunless days. If you ask someone here what he does, he says, fishing and sex, Gatorum tells me. And in the winter, less fishing. As Team Decipher knew, cryptographic mindbenders have been around for centuries. The most legendary is Voynich Manuscript, a handwritten postcard dated to the 15th century, thought to have originated in Central Europe, which cryptographers have still yet to solve. In the past decade, so-called alternate reality games, which took players on elaborate scavenger hunts online and off, had been used to market The Dark Knight, Halo 2, and 9 Inch Nails' record, Year Zero. More romantically, spy masters have used riddles and puzzles as a recruitment technique going back to at least World War II, when British cryptographer Alan Turing used an extreme challenging crossword to help find agents who could crack the Nazi codes. Recently, corporations have also found ciphers useful for scouting. In 2004, a billboard appeared in Silicon Valley with just the cryptic phase, first 10-digit prime found in consecutive digits of E.com. It led to a web page with another mind-numbing math problem, which ultimately landed on the homepage of Google Labs, the testing wing of the online behemoth. One thing we learned while building Google is that it is easier to find out what you're looking for if it comes to looking for you, the message on the site read. What we're looking for are the best engineers in the world, and here you are. In 2011 and 2013, one of the Britain's intelligence agency, the government communication headquarters, carried on Turing's tradition and posted complicated cryptographic puzzles online to attract young talent. The aim was to appeal to a wider and different audience than the more traditional campaigns, in order to reach individuals with technical, analytical, and mathematical skills. In GCHQ...
And that's what Elon Musk is already getting to, bro. Make it get older in each one. But, yeah, that you don't really need degrees and all that shit. If you know your shit, you know your shit. So what if a university gives you a fucking degree that says you know your shit? So like they said, these companies just like, alright, fuck it. We'll put out a puzzle, a hard ass puzzle. We know if you can solve this puzzle, pretty fucking bright enough to work for us, because we devised the puzzle. And we know just average motherfuckers ain't gonna be able to even, crack this shit. So yeah, if you can solve this puzzle, we'll make you a candidate for a position at our company. And once again, you don't know if these motherfuckers been in college or not. These motherfuckers might be 16, 17-year-old prodigies.
Spokesperson told me in a statement, both campaigns were successful. Perhaps 3301 was Google, the solver speculated, or some other corporation, or government, or hacker group. They had no idea. The meta-mystery of 3301's identity made this riddle all the more compelling. Usually with puzzles in a book or a website, you know the driving force behind it, says Kenny Patterson, a cryptographer and professor of information security at the University of London. But here no one knows what the goal is, what you get, how you know, when you won. But whatever it was, the Decipher crew wanted to master it. As they discussed the duck decoy clue in IRC, they realized that the message, looks like you can't guess how to get the message out, contained the words out and guess, which when combined form the word outguess, the name of a stenographer program. Steganography dates back to around 440 BC Greece and entails hiding a message or image within another one. When they ran the duck decoy image through outguess, they rejoiced in unearthing another clue. Here is a book code, it reads, and lists 75 combinations of numbers. Book ciphers have been around since at least 1586, when the French diplomat devised a way to send hidden messages. Using a coordinate system similar to 3301's, he was able to spell out almost any missive using virtually any text. For this clue, 3301 included a link to a Reddit page where the solvers expected to find the book's text, but when they clicked the link, the team was only more confounded. There was a long subreddit page filled with nonsensical lines of jumbled letters and strange dashes and dots in the headers. Tech recognized the dashes and dots as Mayan numerals. I learned that in, like, 4th grade, he says with a sniff. As they scrolled down the lines of alphabet soup below, they found the word welcome, linked to a picture of a welcome mat. Running it through Outguess revealed a pretty good privacy encryption key used to sign and verify messages. Based on the key's text, Marcus derived what he thought to be the full name of the group, Cicada 3301. Further down, they found the question, problems? Which linked to a repeating distorted image of what appeared to be a medieval painting or a tapestry. Within that, a hidden outguessed message. The key has always been right in front of your eyes. This isn't the quest for the Holy Grail. Stop making it more difficult than it is. Good luck, 3301. The new clues initially baffled Marcus and Tech, but they knew there had to be something buried within them. Taking the Mayan numerals, along with others on the page, they derived a sequence of numbers and set about seeing how it might be applied to the garbage letters on the page. It was a tedious and time-consuming process. Up in the pitch-black daytime of the Arctic winter, Gatorum trudged through the work while Marcus and Tech toiled through the night. I have a gift to find patterns where there aren't obvious patterns, Gatorum says, so you can almost call me a schizophrenic. He sat in the glow of 4 computer monitors, staring into the screens until he literally went cockeyed. But the team eventually found a pattern. The first letter of the code became a K, the second I, the third N, the fourth G. The second word was Arthur. The dozens of successive words formed a story. The Decipher team ran the text through Google and found it was a medieval Welsh romance. The Lady of the Fountain, part of the Mabinogion. It concerned a knight who loses his love when he spends too much time pursuing his adventures. Using the book code from the decoy image to analyze the Lady of the Fountain, they found another hidden image. Marcus had become the secretary of Decipher and described it in his notes. The first code is 120, he typed, taking the 20th character of the first line of the decoded text. We get C, continuing with the second line, and A is found. By the end, he had stitched together another message. Call us at a telephone number 214-390-9608. One thought flashed through Marcus's mind as he sat on his bed in his Boy Scout shorts. And it rhymed with, what the duck? Tech was already feeling out of sorts. The puzzle, which the Decipher team was now calling Cicada, had become all-consuming. Solving this thing is kind of addictive, he says. It kind of felt like national treasure. He was staying up until 4 in the morning, dragging himself to school, all the while hiding the secret digital life from his parents. If I had knew what he was solving and known it was from an unknown source, it would have caused me much more stress at the time, his mother tells me. It would have freaked them out, Tech says. Meeting with strangers on the internet to solve puzzles sounded a little sketchy. It got sketchier when the solvers called the mysterious telephone number with the Dallas area code.
Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original final .jpg image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com on the end to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye.
Very good. You have done well, said the computerized voice on the recording. Then it doled out another clue. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original file .jpg. 3301 is one of them. The message went on. You will have to find the other two. Multiply all three of these numbers together and add a .com to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye. The final .jpg image referred to the first one in the puzzle, the white font message against the black background. The group struggled to figure out what other two numbers could be gleaned, until eventually someone tried looking at the height and width. 509 by 503 pixels, both prime. When multiplied with 3301, they got 845,145,127 and added a .com, which led them to another website with a picture of cicada, wings unfurled. Beneath the picture was a countdown clock. Running the image through Outguess revealed the message. You have done well to come this far. It read, patience is a virtue. Check back at 1700 on Monday, January 9th, 2012. Inside his bedroom, Marcus checked his chunky black watch. 1 day to go, noon Roanoke time. He had a Boy Scout meeting on that night of January 9th, but spent the morning in his room anxiously awaiting.
Yo, anybody else? Yo, Frankie. Anybody else seen this, heard about this story right here, Cicada 3301? Yo, this is like the third time I listened to this shit, and it just seemed creepy as shit. Like, these motherfuckers really fucking kept cracking these codes. Then they got a phone number to somewhere in Texas with a recording of another fucking clues to another code. It's like, what the fuck? The fuck is this shit?
0 hour. As 12 p.m. struck, he hit refresh on his web browser and then saw 13 pairs of numbers fill his screen, and so on. Marcus scribbled the numbers and their prime factors on a stray piece of cardboard and felt coldness creep across his chest. Until now, this mystery had been confined to the internet, an invisible journey with a faceless troop across the ether. But Cicada had just broken the fourth wall and flown into the real world. Find our symbol at this location nearest you, the message concluded. The numbers were coordinates. When the Cicada coordinates hit the web, it set off a furious scavenger hunt as solvers punched the locations into Google Maps. There was no way of knowing exactly how many people were on the case, but scores now filled the active Cicada discussion forums. To the astonishment of the solvers, 3301 had somehow planted clues around the world. There were more than a dozen, spread over 4 continents. The street view images seemed random. A narrow street near the University of Warsaw, a parking lot on a busy intersection of Seoul. One location came up in front of the prominent doctor's house in a wealthy section of Seattle. Solvers mobbed the IRC, crowdsourcing anyone close to the locations who could head to the spots. Tech, increasingly spooked, found the whole thing creepy, he says, and his imagination ran wild. They could have been like sitting there with knives at night, he says, just waiting to stab someone who went out. We had no idea what we were doing. Marcus, however, was less concerned and game. After a childhood feeling isolated, he identified with the intellectual breadth and depth of 3301. I saw a kindred spirit in whoever made the puzzles, he said. I didn't have any fear of it. Unfortunately, he didn't have any way to travel. I didn't have any car privileges, he says. And it wasn't like I could say, Mom, the internet told me to drive to Seattle. Instead, and the next day, his mom drove him to his piano class as usual, unaware of the extent of her son's online pursuits. But his mind was on the puzzle. Cicada had become his obsession. Since he'd been working on the puzzle, Marcus had begun to forego sleep, homework, food, much to his mother's concern. She got sick of me not showing up for meals because I was passed out from exhaustion, he says. He hadn't slept the night before. During his piano lessons, he kept sneaking peeks at his torn cardboard piece with the scribbled coordinates and his calculations. Prime numbers seemed to have some unknown significance to 3301. He had wondered if that somehow dictated the logic of posting these locations. His piano teacher noticed his poor performance and later reprimanded him. I haven't slept in 30 hours, he explained. Why on earth? His piano teacher asked. Oh, don't worry about it, Marcus replied. While Marcus looked for a deeper meaning to the coordinates, Tech had news of his own. One of his guys in Decipher had a brother, Bongo, who lived in Sydney and was heading out to the Australia coordinates. Bongo arrived on a leafy residential street. He found a poster with a cryptic black drawing taped to a telephone pole. A cicada. Below it was a square black matrix of a QR code. Before long, similar posters were found around the world. Warsaw, Poland, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Paris, Seoul, Seattle, Miami. When scanned with a QR reader, the codes led to one of the two different riddles, each with a book cipher. The first was the Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition. The other correlation to Agrippa, a 1992 poem by sci-fi novelist William Gibson, which was distributed on a floppy disk and coded to encrypt itself after one read so that it could never be accessed again. Both clues included a somewhat chilling note from 3301 that suggested that they were both aware of and not keen on the solvers' collaboration. "You've shared too much to this point," the note read. "We want the best, not the followers. Thus, the first few there will receive the prize." As the solvers busied themselves with the new puzzle, paranoia spread. "Cicada attracts a fair bunch of loonies and paranoid people," says Martin Wehrmeyer, a solver who helps run the Uncovering Cicada forum. This wasn't feeling like just a game anymore. How much information had they given away? How closely were they being tracked? And who was doing the tracking? Some thought it was with the CIA, the NSA, or even William Gibson himself. Others wondered if it was a criminal hacker group looking for pawns in some nefarious plan. Walken, the Chilean prodigy, got frightened after receiving a call at 2 a.m. that just had an emergency test tone on the other line. On the Cicada forums, he had the others begin noticing that the active members seemed to be dropping out of action. "That got me paranoid," he says, "so I had a contingency plan with a friend where, if I disappeared, I would try to leave behind evidence." Even the more math-minded skeptics who never considered themselves part of the tinfoil hat crowd couldn't help feeling freaked. The competitive aspect of solving the puzzle first also increased, heightening everyone's tension. To throw others off the 3301 trail, the Decipher team began planting false clues online. No one seemed more rattled than Tech. He had others begin questioning people in the Decipher IRC to see if they were moles. They adopted the motto, "Everyone except you is Cicada." Marcos was among those who got fed up with Tech's drama. Tech was really secretive, he recalls. At one point it felt like too much. One afternoon, Tech logged on to find someone had unearthed his true identity and posted pictures of his family along with his home address. Tech was shattered. "It just made me more wary of the internet in general," he says. As more complicated puzzles came their way and more rumors mounted, the number of solvers in the forums dwindled, from frustration, boredom, and fear. But there was one of them who was still fully committed, Marcus. "It was my only life," he said, and since he was homeschooled, he had the luxury and curse of being able to spend as much time on Cicada as he wanted. "That was all I did," he says. On February 6, one long month after seeing the first clue, he received an email from 3301. "Congratulations," it read. "Your month of testing has come to an end. Out of the thousands who attempted it, you are one of the only few who have succeeded. There is one last step. Although there will not be any hidden codes or secret messages or physical treasure hunts. This last step is only honesty. We have always been honest with you, and we expect you to be honest with us in return. You have all wondered who we are, and so we should now tell you we are an international group. We have no name, we have no symbol, we have no membership roster, we do not have a public website, and we do not advertise ourselves. We are a group of individuals who have proven ourselves much like you have by completing this recruitment test. We are drawn together by common beliefs. A careful reading of the texts used in the contest would have revealed some of these beliefs. That tyranny and oppression of any kind must end. That censorship is wrong and the privacy is an inalienable right. We are not a hacker group, nor are we WARS group. We do not engage in illegal activity, nor do our members. If you are engaged in illegal activity, we ask that you cease and all illegal activities or decline membership at this time. We will not ask questions if you decline. However, if you lie to us, we will find out. You are undoubtedly wondering what it is that we do. We are much like a think tank, in that our primary focus is on researching and developing techniques to aid the ideas we advocate. Liberty, privacy, security. It ended with a short questionnaire. Do you believe that every human being has a right to privacy and anonymity? Marcus typed, yes. Do you believe that information should be free? Seriously? Marcus replied. You guys are badass. I'm with you all the way. Do you believe that censorship harms humanity? Without a doubt, he wrote. Count me in. But with one reservation. You have presented two conflicting ideas. Resistance of censorship and a requirement to refrain from illegal activity. What of the people who would have censored certain aspects of culture? What of the pirates? I believe that there should be no restriction on the sharing of information. You asked me and the others chosen ones to cease sharing of copyright material? He concluded respectfully. Thank you for your life-changing experience. Then he hit send and waited to see if 3301 would take him in. On February 28th, Marcus received an email signed with 3301's PGP key. Hello, it read. The next step is finally here. The message included specific instructions for visiting a secret site on the darknet, the hidden part of the web, along with a username and password. The message concluded with one powerful word, ushering Marcus into 3301. Welcome, it read. Marcus wasn't the only solver to receive the message. So did, by Marcus and Tech's estimate, at least 20 others. Tech was still very wary. I wasn't sure what I was getting into, he recalls. The darknet address led them to a page where they found themselves in a chat forum with the other recruits, as well as a handful of people who claimed to be part of 3301. It felt thrilling to have finally arrived. The solvers wanted answers. Who were 3301? What were their goals? How did they start? They received some circumspect answers from the elders, though of course they had no idea what was really true, or if they were being played. 3301, the story went, had been started by a few friends who shared like-minded imperatives, anonymity, privacy, encryption, and wanted a way to pool their talents to create useful software that ensured these ideals. As friends recruited friends, 3301 grew internationally. The group, as they understood it, had no official affiliation with any of the government or military. They insinuated they were a part of a bunch of different organizations, Tech recalls. It was some kind of secret society. They shared a common goal, to increase privacy and security in the digital age and ensure the freedom of information. In many ways, the Cicada group reminded Marcus of the Boy Scouts, except they didn't have a handbook, he says. They had an ideology. 3301 took inspiration from cicadas, creatures who are, in a sense, masters of encryption. In particular, the Inner Circle referenced the so-called periodical cicadas whose populations, called broods, only emerge from the underground every 13 or 17 years. Prime number years at that. In fact, the handle of one of the mentors was Magicada, the genius name for the periodical bugs. Evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould has speculated that the prime number emergencies serve to protect the cicada from predators who might otherwise come to rely on them as a regular food source. 3301, they were told, was organized into decentralized cells, also called broods, each with its own area of research. They were told that the group is compartmentalized, so that the individual cells had no knowledge of each other. Marcus, Tech, and other recruits were told that they were brood. Puzzles were not always used for recruitment, but had been, in this case, because the group was seeking new members with coding and cryptography skills. Now that the new brood had been taken in, the 3301 members told them they would be tasked with creating software that fit the ideology of the group. In the discussion on the Darknet site that ran for weeks, the recruits decided to create software to protect whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning, who was facing trial at the time. Together, they came up with an idea they called the Cicada Anonymous Key Escrow System, or CAKES, in short. It would trigger the automatic publication of sensitive data online if and when the whistleblower or researcher was indisposed for a designated period of time due to, say, death or incarceration. For months, Marcus and the other collaborated on CAKES, working on their own and sharing notes on 3301's hidden site. The mentors from 3301 would drop in and share their comments and thoughts on the progress. This kind of secret collaborative process was unusual, but not without precedent. Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, had been developed in secrecy as well. But for Brood, the buzz of the acceptance soon gave way to the drudgery of what felt like homework. Marcus would log on to see that fewer and fewer of the others were completing their tasks. Even Tech, who had to deal with the real-world tasks of a summer job, had stopped visiting the forum early on. I had other work to focus on, he says. I just faded away. By the end of 2012, Marcus was the last one still coding. But after months on his laptop, he was stuck. Part of his enthusiasm for Solomon Cicada and joining 3301 was to collaborate with others, to get out of his box in Roanoke and be a part of something larger, something powerful, something world-changing. But now here he was sort of full circle, the last scout on the trail. With cakes only partially done, he appealed to the elders in 3301 to recruit new members with the skills to help them complete the programming. His mentors communicated that they would be looking for new recruits. Despite all this time in 3301, he still didn't know much more about the group other than what he had been told initially. And for fear of being excommunicated, he didn't discuss it with his family or friends. On January 4, 2013, the anniversary of the first Cicada puzzle, solvers crowded the IRC channel, anticipating when and how the new puzzle from 3301 would drop. Amid the crowd, an anonymous person posted a mysterious confessional. I was part of what you called 3301 Cicada for more than a decade, the anonymous author wrote, and I'm here to warn you, stay away. Any pretentiously dire and anonymous message on the internet could be bullshit or trolling. But as the skeptical solver read the screed, the author seemed knowledgeable enough about 3301 to give them pause. The author said he had been a military officer in an unnamed, non-English speaking country when after a year of being unknowingly vetted in person, he was recruited by a member of 3301. He described them as a group of like-minded individuals, all incredibly talented and connected, working together for the common good, the good of mankind. But over several paragraphs, he cautioned about their cultish beliefs. A conviction, for example, in the global brain and another kind of God. 3301 was nothing more, he wrote, than a religion disguised as a progressive scientific organization. He concluded by saying he had since found Jesus. The warning, as the post became known among Cicada obsessives, only added to the mythology and conspiracy theories, particularly since the author of the post could not be reached and disappeared. Some wrote it off as the rant of some crazy troll or 4chan punk, messing with their heads. For insiders like Marcus, though, the details in the warning rang true. The military origins, the ideology behind the work. He believed it could have come from someone in the group, but it was also perhaps purposefully misinformation to deter anyone naive enough to believe it. I think it was meant to keep people away, he says. In fact, the warning proves especially well-timed. Hours after it appeared, an image was posted to 4chan, written in the familiar thin white font. Hello again, it read. Our search for intelligent individuals now continues. The first clue is hidden within this image. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck, 3301. As solvers swarmed to the puzzle, Marcus had grown weary of laboring away on cakes, alone, and awaited what he hoped would be an influx of fresh recruits to help him. The 2013 version of Cicada offered up more extremely complicated riddles. There was a cipher based on a book by occultist Aleister Crowley. There was another riddle embedded in a song, an amplified guitar instrumental that upon spectral analysis revealed a humming sound at a frequency of 15.5 to 16.1 kilohertz. And an analysis of the MP3 file uncovered a hidden message. Like the instar tunneling to the surface, we must shed our own circumferences. Find the divinity within the emerge. There were more coordinates, more Cicada images tacked to telephone poles. Since he was already inside the group, Marcus had been spending too much time trying to solve the new puzzles. But a friend in Japan sent him a Cicada poster he found at a street corner in Okinawa. Yet within weeks, solvers hit a dead end. Some claiming to have completed the puzzle, returned to the forums complaining they never received the final invites from 3301 to join the groups. Perhaps those who had been recruited this year simply refused to reveal themselves. All Marcus knew was that, if there was a new brood selected, they were nowhere to be found on the Darknet site. He had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. Perhaps the Brood hadn't lived up to 3301's expectations. Perhaps they'd been infiltrated by the authorities. Perhaps 3301 were the authorities, and this was all some weird honeypot. In March, Marcus received a message from another solver, nicknamed Sage, who made it into the 2012 Brood. We've been laid off, Sage told him, but had no further information. When Marcus tried to log back onto the Darknet site, it was gone. Ron Patrick, the head of the recruitment for the Central Intelligence Agency, tells me the agency is discussing development of a Cicada-style puzzle of its own. Patrick first learned of Cicada from his college-age kids, who wanted to know if the CIA had created it. As conspiracy theorists on the internet suspected, they thought for sure we were the ones behind it, he tells me. It's definitely not us. Patrick, like the solvers, doubts 3301 is affiliated with the government or corporation. But from what he had gathered, he says it's difficult to really know. Across the world, cryptographers, scholars, feds, and geeks are speculating as to what's the real story behind 3301. Alan Woodward, a professor at the University of Surrey who specializes in computer security, first suspected that the NSA or the GCHQ was pulling the strings, but he now thinks that the breadth of the puzzle could point to a large corporation recruiting skilled cryptographers, game developers, and cryptography expert Alonka Dunnan thinks of it just maybe a group of people in a chat room giggling, but adds, I put word out to my crypto friends about Cicada and came back with a big blank. Given the complexity of the puzzles, most believe that 3301 can't be an individual and has to be at least a small group. Whether or not it has military origins, no one really knows. It could be just one big nerdy head game, engineered by some wayward puzzle master who simply get off on the pleasures of their own myth-making. Or it could be, as the warning suggested, something more high-minded. Or maybe it really is the product of some like-minded geeks out to better the world. At the moment, no one really knows for sure, which of course is exactly what keeps it intriguing in the first place. As for Cicada, the mystery didn't end in 2013 after all. On January 6, 2014, a Twitter account under the handle posted another cryptic message in a white font against a black background. Hello, it read, Epiphany is upon you. Your pilgrimage has begun. Enlightenment awaits. Solvers, however, has spent the better part of the year stuck in the Cicada hole, trying to decipher 58 pages of ruins. So far, there is no word of any solvers completing it. As of this writing on early January, diehards are awaiting anxiously to see if or when the 2017 puzzle begins. But there is one former 3301 member who has decided to surface regardless, Marcus Wehner. For 2 years, he remained silent and anonymous. He wonders why 3301 had stopped reaching out to him, and wonders perhaps the Brood had done something to annoy him, or somehow not proved its worth. But enough time has passed without words that he figures that now, in the spirit of free information, in which 3301 so staunchly believed, he should share his story and work. It's time to go public, he tells me, in his dorm of Virginia Tech, where he's studying computer science. In addition to sharing his story, Marcus had decided to hide the code for cakes on the darknet, where others might find it and finish what his Brood started. Tor Eklund, an attorney with the Whistleblowers Defense League, who has represented several high-profile hacktivists, says such software should be extremely valuable because it gives leverage and protection to the whistleblower. There's nothing like this out there. Ever the faithful scout, Marcus says the completion of the project would fulfill the pledge he made to 3301. But given all the secrecy and misdirection, he isn't sure how the mystery puzzle masters will take it. Hopefully, he says, Cicada won't be on my case. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please contact me on Twitter.
Alright, let me stop fucking with that shit for a minute. And that shit was interesting. That cicada shit, yeah, that shit is pretty interesting.
One of the most disappointing moments in my life was when I realized that as cool as they look, giant robots just are not practical war engines. Our topic for today is space warfare, and was selected by a poll over on the channel's Facebook group. This makes for a tricky topic for a couple of reasons. First, we have never had a military conflict in space, so it is hard to speak of it in any way but theoretical. Tactics change constantly in warfare, and are hugely dependent on what the technology of the time is. We don't know what the available technologies will be, and they ought to change over time too. So with all those uncertainties, I cannot realistically come into today's episode saying this is how war will be fought in the future in space. But we can look at a lot of the common concepts. We also have to look at them briefly, since this is the 5th iteration of the script and every version had different topics, and none of those 4 came in at less than 30 minutes. So I'm electing to a fast approach to touch on topics rather than going into deep detail. We can always come back and look at some of them in greater depth down the road. Categories are inevitably arbitrary, but here are the ones for today. Number 1, stealth. Number 2, range. Number 3, weapons. And number 4, defenses. You probably noticed I didn't include a section on whether or not we would ever have wars in space, or on the morality of war. We do sometimes cover ethical concepts on the channel, but my goal in doing so is only to ever set the stage for folks to ponder it on their own and draw their own conclusions. So I reserve it for when we are in an alien landscape, exploring some technology or concept that is not familiar to most, in which case it is handy to lay out a lot of the basic concepts and concerns others have raised on the topic to get the wheels turning. The ethical arguments involving war are hardly unfamiliar, and in spite of spending about half of my adult life in the military, and a good portion of that in frontline combat units, I can't say it granted me any special new insights. Since I don't have any, and since everyone is already familiar with the topic, it would seem quite silly to spend what little time we have today on that. But that's not entirely true. I do have some special insights. For instance, there are a lot of rules to warfare, but for some reason they almost always are rule number 1. There's a lot of rule number 1s. I decided to start with stealth to get it out of the way. This one is simple. There is no stealth in space. I will attach an article from our friends at Project Rho that goes into the nuts and bolts of that, but this discussion is so well worn over, with nobody ever coming up with a way that doesn't violate known laws of physics, that there's actually a law on it, Nyquil's law, and a couple corollaries. We will still do the basic walkthrough though. First, and most obviously, we never know what weird new tech someone might make or when someone might find some new physics. But for this episode, we are keeping it in the realm of known science. I am not going to say stealth in space is impossible, but I have never heard of a workable scheme, and I don't know anyone who has. Everyone wants to have stealth because it's very handy. I mean, that is rule number 1 of combat. Don't let the enemy see you. Stealth is without doubt the most valuable thing in war. So people want stealth, but there are some reasons why this isn't viable. First, we have the engines themselves. And putting it kind of bluntly, a spaceship's rockets are about as covert and subtle as a pack of clowns parading around with drums and megaphones in a town plaza during the daytime. They are literally the least unnoticeable thing there is. They are giant explosions. The sorts of engines we use right now to get stuff into space could be detected by the sorts of equipment we have right now all the way out on the fringe of the solar system. The kinds you need to move the big ships we often see in sci-fi might be detectable at interstellar distances. And that's assuming people haven't gotten better detectors, which they would. since we know how to build much bigger and better telescopes than we have right now. We just don't because hauling them up into space where they work best is too expensive. The cleverest way I've ever heard of for trying to conceal that would be to have all your exhaust coming out as neutrinos, and in tight beams you could aim off at an angle behind you in the direction of nothing. How you would do that was not explained, but even then, one tends to assume if you can make all your thrust neutrinos and tightly beamed like that, then people have probably also gotten much better at detecting them too, so I doubt that would help much. But it wouldn't make much difference anyway, because we still have 3 other ways to pick up a ship. The second is the light it blocks. If something passes between a star and you, it blocks that light, and there are a lot more stars than we can see with our naked eye. They also can't just mimic the light they are blocking, since that won't be the same for 2 different observers. If you just happen to know where everyone is who can see you, you could emit a laser at each that replicated what they were supposed to see, but that's hardly foolproof and wouldn't work if you didn't know where all the monitors were, for instance. If you could get around that, you would still have the third problem, which is that you are giving off infrared heat. Everything you do on your ship warms it up, and that heat can only escape by radiating away. We can pick up radio signals out in the outer solar system light hours away that are only 10 or 20 watts. Your body is giving off more than that right now in infrared. Now you could maybe run cold, drifting in with all your crew on ice or no crew at all, just a computer doing minimal tasks. Heck, maybe just one big chunk of metal moving at relativistic velocities, a relativistic kill missile or RKM, which we will talk about more later, but basically a big bullet. The problem is, space is not a true vacuum. Even interstellar space tends to have about 1 million hydrogen atoms per cubic meter, and your missile is moving at hundreds of millions of meters a second. Even a missile only about 1 meter wide is going to slam into around 1 quadrillion hydrogen atoms a second and be emitting hundreds of kilowatts of radiation from that. So your sleek and stealthy missile is only as loud as a radio transmitter for a major metropolitan network. The faster it goes, or the bigger it is, the brighter it is. Plus, it will still block starlight. So again, stealth is not really an option in space without some new physics-breaking technology. Now that doesn't mean you can't use other types of stealth, like pretending to be someone else, or having someone sabotage your enemy's sensor networks, but that's a different story. Also, there is still going to be a maximum range at which someone can detect a certain thing. Maybe you can see a big starship's engines around another star, but that does not mean you could detect a cold-running, sleek, and stealthy missile that far off. And range, our next topic, is a weird one. We will often hear people talk about the maximum range of a weapon, for instance, and that can get confusing. For instance, most pistols are no good out past 100 meters, but what we mean by that is what distance a decent marksman using normal ammo can hit a human-sized target at without lots of special conditions aiding or hindering him.
Alright, put some music on after this one right here.
The broadside of a ball a lot further out because bullets don't magically fall out of the sky after 100 meters. They can easily travel kilometers before landing, and while all sorts of things about the gun, the ammo, or the air can alter its expected trajectory a bit, they generally stay pretty on course. There is no air in space, and one assumes we will get increasingly precise with our weaponry, so that's not the source of maximum ranges in space. People often get irritated by energy weapons like lasers having some listed maximum range because a laser should keep going forever, which is not actually true, but for practical purposes more or less is, because they do have a maximum range from something else. Space is big. Really, really, really big. So even though light moves really, really quick, it still means it can take quite a while for the light from your target to reach you, and your laser to reach them. They are no longer going to be in the same place since they are presumably moving. Now that's not a problem in and of itself. If you know how fast someone is going, and in what direction you can aim for where they will be when your shot arrives. But if they've got fuel to spare, they can be accelerating. And while no one ever shows it in science fiction, even though those ships always seem to have infinite fuel, The first and most obvious defensive maneuver any ship's captain would learn would be to have his ship constantly flicking around in random directions. Just a little side thrust for a minute one way and then another picked at random. So if your target is 1 light minute away, it will take a minute for light to reach you and a minute for you to send back, and that means that ship has 2 minutes to accelerate. If it did at just 1 G, it would be anywhere inside a 70-kilometer radius sphere, centered on where you expected it to be. If it were 2 Gs, it would be 140 kilometers. If it were twice the distance, at 1 G, it would be 280 kilometers. Of course, if the ship were 70 kilometers wide, it wouldn't matter. You could aim for its middle and still hit. Though I wouldn't suggest shooting at something that big, since taking pot shots at a warship the size of a country is probably picking a fight you don't want. That's rule number 1 of combat. Never pick a fight with anyone bigger than you. Actually, even fair fights are a bad idea. So you are best off always picking on someone smaller than you, and it's still a good idea to cheat any way you can. Always having an advantage in firepower is without a doubt the most valuable thing in war. So the bigger a target is, and the slower it can accelerate, the further away you can hit it with lasers. Don't assume big means slow though. A ship twice as massive needs twice the fuel to accelerate with, but it does have twice the room for fuel. It probably has more too, since it can get away with not doubling everything else. You do not necessarily need a second coffee maker on a ship just because you doubled your mass, even if you doubled your crew, which you probably wouldn't need to. Obviously, you need at least 1 coffee maker, since no sane military commander would ever go to war without a ready supply of coffee. But the key point is big doesn't mean slow, and again quite possibly the reverse. It will still have a larger effective range you can hit it at though, because the range is always based on how fast the ship is and how big it is. For instance, some robot drone the size of a baseball only needs to move maybe 10 centimeters to seriously decrease your odds of hitting it, meaning it is hard to hit even a light second away, even if it can only do 1 G, and it might be able to pull off thousands of Gs. This does not mean smaller is always better though, and we'll look at that more later on. Other weapons have different sorts of maximum ranges. For instance, a missile can have a guidance system that will guarantee it hits, so long as it doesn't get shot down or run out of fuel. Running out of fuel is not really about distance in space though. It is about being able to catch up to whatever you are trying to hit, and still having some fuel to change directions to intercept it if it is dodging and to avoid being shot down. A ship could run right by you, and you might still be unable to hit it with your missiles if it is trucking along at 1/10 the speed of light, and your missiles don't have the fuel to get to that speed themselves. That's even more true if you are moving the opposite direction when you fired them, and now you need to make up another 1/10 of light speed just to get back to where you fired them. So range is a pretty variable concept in space warfare, and depends on the target's characteristics as much as the weapons themselves. Moving on to weapons, we've got tons, even without going into some of the cooler but less scientifically realistic ones. And I'll still go through some of those too. We've got lasers, we've got masers and grazers, we've got railguns and nukes and missiles and kinetic weapons and antimatter and particle beams and even exotic particle beams and black holes. But more importantly, we have some specific classifications of weapons. Smart versus dumb, light speed versus slower than light, and ones which can circumvent intervening space. Now in this context, a normal gun would be classified as sublight and dumb. It doesn't circumvent space either because it does need to pass through it and anything in it. Alternatively, a classic sci-fi teleporter could presumably teleport a bomb right to a location. Here I'm using circumvent space to mean both something that could just leap from point A to point B that way, or which does not have to worry about being weakened or disrupted by things in the way, sort of like an armor-piercing round can go through armor. I should note on things we think of as guns that the barrel of a gun in space doesn't serve the same purpose in a vacuum as in air. Rifling in barrels primarily exists to let the bullet spin and stabilize its flight through air, though it also helps to avoid the issue muskets had of the ball not fitting the barrel to give a good seal. Long barrels on space weapons just serve to give the projectile more room to accelerate. I mention this because when we think of space warfare, we tend to assume everything being shot that isn't energy is a smart weapon. We can make computers mighty small, and sticking a small guidance package into every bullet would seem like a good idea. The problem is that while we can make circuits that can withstand accelerations that would turn you or I into chunky salsa, they still can't handle the same amount of acceleration one solid chunk of iron or uranium could. So you should always be able to produce dumb rounds that come out faster than smart ones, and that should hold in the future too, even if we can make smart weapons able to handle a lot more G-force. That means you can have a much shorter barrel with a much faster reaction time too. It's not something we normally have to think about at the scale and speed we do war at nowadays, but if I want to shoot a gun at something, I have to turn the barrel to point it where I want to aim. A long barrel is going to tear itself apart if you turn it too fast, and any lag time caused by the weapon cycling up and shooting is going to add to that distance your target can dodge by accelerating. That said, and that's mostly a concern for point defense, which we will talk about in the next section, by and large you want smart weapons wherever you can have them. You can't make a laser smart though, and it is your fastest weapon. We also tend to assume every projectile is going to have a warhead in it, but it depends on what sort of speeds we're talking about. Very fast weapons don't benefit from having chemical explosives in them. Their collision energy is already way higher than an equal weight of explosives would have. Relativistic projectiles, things moving at a decent fraction of the speed of light, don't benefit from even a nuclear warhead aboard. They are already carrying around energy comparable to antimatter. If you are not familiar with the kind of yields antimatter has, a normal bullet that included a little bit of antimatter inside it would explode like a nuke. Amusingly meaning that you could make a pistol or rifle that fired a nuke with every trigger pull, but you'd be inside the blast radius. So much smaller bullets with much smaller amounts of antimatter in them would be smarter. Normal bullets for firearms tend to weigh a few grams. 1 gram of antimatter combining with an equal amount of normal matter is a few times more potent than the original atom bombs used at the close of the Second World War, while a billionth of a gram is more on par with a modern hand grenade. However, while hitting a nuke with a hammer or a bullet will just damage it, not cause it to explode, antimatter is the exact opposite. It doesn't require a complex process to make it detonate. It requires a complex one to prevent it, since it explodes the instant it touches normal matter. We usually figure on using magnetic bottles to contain antimatter, but those probably cannot handle very high G accelerations. Your average bullet undergoes thousands of Gs, for instance, and bouncing off the ground tends to be a lot more than 1 G too. So while on the surface antimatter is both the perfect explosive and the perfect rocket fuel, that is only true if you can not only produce huge amounts of it cheaply, but also can store it safely and use it safely. If firing it out of a rifle or cannon barrel caused the magnetic bottle to fail to contain it, you just blew up your gun. And given the yields involved, not just your gun, but everything within several miles. That's rule number 1 of combat. Never use a weapon that's as likely to kill you and your allies as it is the enemy. That's why Claymore mines have big notes on them, reminding you which way to point them, and why biowarfare has never been popular with militaries. Now, a laser is the fastest weapon, which at close range means it never misses either, but at a distance it can miss since it can't change its course. This also applies to variations on the laser like the maser, which shoots microwaves, or the grazer, which is a gamma ray version. Missiles can change course so are better at long ranges. They are also not vulnerable to mirrors. No mirror is 100% reflective, and they normally only act as a mirror for certain ranges. For instance, we don't even have a material that can reflect gamma rays yet, while the normal mirror for microwaves is chicken wire. Hit a mirror with enough juice and it will get destroyed. Hit it with a frequency it doesn't reflect, or doesn't reflect as well, and it will get destroyed. Pepper the enemy with debris to damage those mirrors, and they will get destroyed. But they are still a decent defense against lasers, so missiles have an advantage there too. Now, an energy weapon doesn't have to shoot photons. A gravity-based laser would go just as fast if you could figure out how to make one, but you don't need to go at light speed. 99.9% of light speed is just about as good, and you could have a particle accelerator, a particle beam or particle projectile cannon, which will get the job done against a meal too. They are susceptible to a magnetic shield though. Key concept here is that a mix of weapons is a good thing, even if some get you less bang for your buck. Now there's a lot of sci-fi weapons we are skipping because they either are just made up or not based on known science, but one I did want to mention that's at the fringe if possible is meson beams. Neutral pions, a type of meson, interact with normal matter about as weakly as neutrinos, which as you've probably heard could slide through a light-year thick sheet of lead uninterrupted. Neutrinos don't make a good weapon for that reason. A neutrino beam would just go right through someone's armor, but they'd also go right through that personal ship too. But neutral pions decay, quite quickly too. They're the shortest lived pion and live for only about a 10 millionth of a nanosecond, which means normally they die before they even get outside of the atom they originated from. But we can detect them by slowing down time when we make them, by making them go very, very fast. Now with a big enough accelerator that they can cover real-world distances before decaying, and they normally decay into gamma rays, so you can bypass people's armor with something like that. Now a particle's half-life is not an accurate timer where beams are concerned, even if they form the basis of the very accurate atomic clocks. Not all those mesons will decay at just the moment they pass through the target, and the further away you are shooting, the less likely it is a given meson would decay inside the target. But if you are at close ranges, or you can make them at close ranges, or you've got a target that is just impenetrably armored, it is a potential weapon that can circumvent armor, akin to teleporting a bomb inside an enemy ship, or opening up a wormhole inside a bunker. Wormholes, should we ever be able to get them to work, are obviously excellent weapons too. Also a good reminder to sci-fi authors. A lot of super technology made for a book or movie or TV ends up breaking suspension of disbelief when people start realizing what other purposes it can be put to, and just about anything can be weaponized. Micro black holes are another type of circumventing weapon and one we discussed before. Black holes have a lifetime, according to Hawking, and the lighter they are, the shorter they live. Ones weighing only about a ton would only live a few nanoseconds, for instance, but would be a lot smaller than a proton, and would fly right through basically anything, then die, releasing energies that would make the biggest nuke we ever made look like a firecracker. You can time these a lot better too, by controlling the mass and speed you shoot it at, and it's not something you can really stop because it's so tiny but has so much inertia. They are not really black though. They'll be bleeding off huge amounts of radiation on the way there, so you might be able to knock one off course with a very powerful and very narrow laser. I'd laugh at that, except you basically need those kinds of lasers to make these sorts of black holes, Kugelblitz black holes, in the first place. So if your enemy has the tech to make them, you have the tech to deflect one. But it would still be a nigh impossible target to hit in order to do that. And it will go right through any type of armor, though of course it can still miss and it can still be dodged. As we move into defense, we can see another obvious rule number one. The best defense is not getting hit, so distance is your best defense. Of course, it is also hard to beat your enemy if you stay far away, so that's not always an option. If you have to get into a slugging match, it does pay to have armor, and this is a case where size does matter. Let's say I have armor that's a meter thick on a ship and uses up 10 to the square cube law. I should have 8 times more volume and mass, but only 4 times as much surface area. So meter thick armor on it now only uses up 5% of the ship's mass, not 10%. Maybe I use that 5% for more engines and fuel. Maybe I just use it for more armor. And again, I can probably get a bit more than 5% since some of my systems didn't need to go up proportionally with the mass. As mentioned earlier, I don't necessarily need 8 times the crew or coffee pots just because my ship is 8 times heavier. We also have point defense. While you can use reflective hulls to handle laser attacks, and magnetic fields around you to help against solar radiation and particle beams, they won't do much against missiles and bullets and big explosions. Armor helps with that too, but ideally you blow stuff up before it gets to you, and the sooner you hit it, the less damage you take, as it will spread out in a cone. The wider, the better. A quick note there. We think of explosives as going off in a sphere, but in practice, if the exploding thing is moving fast, it is going to be shaped as a cone, as all the material keeps moving forward even as it explodes in a sphere in its own rest frame. That means anything you blow up is still going to go off like a shotgun blast. So you want to let it have as much room to widen out as possible, so most of it is not hitting your ship, or at least is spreading all over your armor, not at just one point. Now, a laser is a great point defense weapon, since it can't miss at ranges you need to worry about shrapnel, though there's a lot to be said about high-speed equivalents to flak cannons, or just having a ton of small debris near you. A nuke is a pretty good way to deal with volleys, too. Always a thing to keep in mind. If you've got a point defense system that can reliably shoot down a missile a second, your enemy isn't going to politely feed you one every second. They are going to send 10 in at the same time every 10 seconds instead. Lasers aren't necessarily ideal for that scenario. You might have relativistic slugs coming at you that have some maneuverability, and you can't target them till they are 1,000 kilometers out. That is not a lot of time, and they're going to need a big, powerful hit to shred them up enough to spread out so their shrapnel doesn't tear you apart. I usually laugh when people refer to nukes as a defensive weapon. They are in a diplomatic sense, but not when the fighting starts. But in this case, they can be. You know you can't target the volley of inbound objects fast enough with lasers, so when you first pick them up, you fire a nuke toward them and intercept them further out with a device where precision strikes don't much matter. Of course, it would be nice to have the classic sci-fi shield or force field, but we don't have any paths to that in known science, just magnetic fields and the like. But we do have the option of an even more classic shield, the old-school big sheet of metal on an arm. Such a shield can be thicker than your normal armor because it doesn't have to be all over. You move it to interpose with your enemy. It's also out at a distance, so when it starts getting shredded, the stuff that gets through is still going to be deflected and scattered, and you've got some distance for it to scatter. This is space after all. Your shield doesn't have to be right next to your ship. Your arm could be hundreds of kilometers long. You can also use that to maneuver with, as a way of saving fuel for bouncing around in random directions, since you can just tilt and roll with the thing, or things. That still takes energy, but less of it, and it could be mostly recovered, as with a spring, and it's not costing you any reaction mass, or leaving huge jets of flames when you move. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of stuff we bypassed today. There's never enough time, but I think we've covered the key concepts important to considering this topic, which is always our goal here, to set people up to know what the right questions are to ask and where to go to find out more. Our friends at Project Rho are a great source for more on spaceships, including spaceship fights. For those of you more interested in looking at infantry or ground combat aspects, I'll also recommend MillSF.com, operated by my friend Arthur Bill Frisbee. He has tons of articles discussing a ton of topics on that subject. I'll link both in the episode description, and while they are amazing resources for sci-fi authors, they are also a lot of fun to read if you just like the sort of in-depth approach we do on this channel. Next week, we will be beginning a short series of related videos on colonization. As mentioned, today's topic was picked by the Facebook group, and the close second was to take a look at early colonization of other solar systems, sort of as an extension on last week's fun collaboration on colonizing our own solar system with Fraser Cain of Universal Today. When I was thinking about it, though, I realized that while we often talk about the more technological and mechanical aspects of things, like spaceships or asteroid mining or planet bases, we never spend much time on what life on those would actually be like. We never talk about the day-to-day life on them. We never talk about how you would govern one. We never talk about what life on a colony ship would be like. And I think we can and should try to give that a look, because it's a common conversation when people discuss these topics, and there are a lot of misconceptions I think we can address. It's also a long topic, so we will break it up into 3 phases to set the stage. looking at life on a remote colony in our own solar system, then life on a colony ship, then our early extrasolar colony. Make sure to subscribe for alerts when those episodes come out. And if you want to discuss this topic more, or get to suggest topics and vote in the polls we pick them from, make sure to come on over and join the Facebook group Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like it and share it with others. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.
Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, talking about space warfare. Let me check the time. I got a haircut. Get my damn hair done. Still pretty early.
Depression is a tangle of multiple symptoms.
Just like commercials.
Quiz Cube, play that beat again.
am the one and only DQ chicken strip basket, now $4.99. I am the 100% all-white meat tenderloin reason you close your eyes when you bite. Country gravy don't normally take to strangers, but it sure as sugar takes to me. Because I'm not fast food. I am fan food.
Taylor about the fucking flex.
It's too orange, but in a good way.
Totally too orange in a good way.
Don't settle. Shop eBay for the look you want from all the best brands.
Taylor about the fucking flex. Taylor about the fucking flex.
still really can't see, but that's, I don't know. I did add some, I don't know, damn, you can't really see that shit. It's all good. Y'all will see it in a minute. I was gonna keep the camera up close, because from a distance, it don't even look like I'm changing the colors at all, but I am.
Welcome to Atlanta, babe. Haven't you ever wanted something so much that you had to go for it no matter what it took?
Atlanta is filled with such.
Atlanta is filled with a bunch of bitches who want to rap and dance. Where the engineer? Why don't you make a movie, a show about a computer engineer or fucking somebody's trying to compete with Tesla and making fucking electric batteries and shit. Tired of seeing ambitious goals about being a fucking entertainer, yo. What the hell? Have you ever felt like you just had to do something no matter what? Like dance? Get the fuck out of here, man. How many more dance movies do you goddamn need? That's why I got that wood easel, because I fucking hate this easel right here. I don't hate it. It's difficult to fucking use. But it's the perfect size for certain canvases. That wood easel is just too big for some shit. And I don't need it because I can't put it as high as I want without hitting the crap. Peace all on the track. What the